Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday, and more importantly, happy commie takeover. We even have a glorious victory that we can talk about today.
That's right, indeed. Yes, we banished the right-wingers from this program. No both sides, just one side.
That's right.
Various
That's how we're
perspectives
rolling
from
this
one
Friday.
side.
That's right. It's like a DSA meeting.
That's right.
Still can have some vicious arguments, but, you know,
It's gonna get way in the
allegedly
weeds.
all aligned.
Yeah.
Yes. We do have a lot interesting to get to. We're going to start with this New Jersey race, which really kind of came out of nowhere. A lefty win here and a total AIPAC own goal. We got a bunch of Epstein horror to get through, including some new images from the prison the night that he was unalived, however that occurred. We've got economic numbers. We've got new Trump election comments in the premium half. We've got the Bitcoin drop. We've got some really messy right-wing drama that, frankly, could not take my eyes off of. And some very, very charming clips of Zohran Mamdani with some young children. So definitely want to be able to get access to that. So if you're not a premium subscriber and you're able to, breakingpoints.com, and then you get the whole Friday show and the AMAs and all that good stuff.
Should we go ahead and jump into this exciting news out of New Jersey?
Yes.
So this was a total. Go ahead and throw up the results here. But this was a total own goal from sort of the establishment, and also a major own goal from AIPAC. So these are the results that we have from New Jersey's 11th district right now. At least it's showing, and I don't think we're at 100% of the total. It's still sitting at around 91.3% of the expected votes counted right now. But you can see here, 28.7% by just a couple hundred votes. We had Anna Lilia Mejia, who topped out over Tom Malinowski. And neither of these candidates were actually the AIPAC-backed candidate, who came all the way in third place down here. But Ryan, why don't you go ahead and break down the massive own goal here by AIPAC and the establishment in this?
Yeah, and so the context is this is a super rich, like, northern New Jersey suburban district. Like, a lot of these people work in New York City. A lot of them are actually like pharmaceutical industry, like pharmaceutical executives. Like it's just a very kind of funny place for a Bernie Sanders candidate to win.
Well, and this was Mikey Sherrill's district. That's the reason they're having this special election.
Yes, exactly.
She's now the governor of New Jersey. Now, she's sort of repositioned herself as more of a populist, but she very much like was a centrist style candidate, because that was the thought of the type of candidate that would win a Democratic primary and succeed in a general election in this district.
Yeah, and so Tom Malinowski was a former member of Congress. He lost election. He got in some trouble over his stock trading, but otherwise, fairly standard. He has had some background in the human rights world, but other than that, was a kind of fairly standard Democrat. Mejia, longtime activist. Like, this is the kind of person that, Krystal, you probably know her. I've known her for very many years, just as somebody who's been in the Working Families Party, Bernie Sanders world. She was a top aide to Bernie Sanders during the campaign. And so when she jumped in, kind of all of those people got behind her, which gave her, and got behind her early. And Elizabeth Warren also got behind her. So it was like the whole kind of faction was together, AOC, Bernie, etc. But she had no money. Like, I think she spent $400,000, and this is the New York media market. So, that's gonna buy you some mailers, and you can have some staff, but AIPAC dropped more than $2 million. And so what they did, Malinowski, they've supported him in the past. He's been fairly friendly to Israel, but like all Democrats, he's getting a little bit skittish about the relationship with Israel. And so he said some mildly critical things. And I think he might have suggested that some weapon systems maybe ought to get some review at some point. And so they're like, oh, no. Like,
what a radical.
This is too radical. This will not fly. So they dropped more than $2 million on him at the very end to try to crush him. The reason that so many outlets called this in New Jersey for Malinowski, and then had to very embarrassingly retract their calls, is that he won the early vote fairly decisively. So in other words, before AIPAC's money has really landed in the race, he's going to comfortably win this race, this 3-person race. But he then in the election day vote, finished third in most places. So they knocked him even behind the also ran AIPAC candidate. And you started seeing Mejia winning by 20, 30, 40, 50 points on election day. And it was enough then to overcome the early. And so this was something that Jewish Insider that covered the race. They warned about it. Dave Dan was like, like people watching the race. I saw Adam Green, who runs PCCC this week, and he was like, AIPAC might deliver this for us. So this was like, it was known that like AIPAC might actually take Malinowski down far enough that it would allow Mejia, with her ground game and her strong base of support, to sneak through. And she did. Now, the best part, Mac, do you have the ad?
Yeah.
So when AIPAC spends in these races, obviously they're not saying, don't vote for Tom Malinowski because he's too mean to Israel. He didn't support our genocide. Like, he wants to restrict weapons that are going to, they don't say that. They poll Malinowski and they figure out what are the things that work against him. And for him, they obviously did the stock trading scandal that he had, but they led with ICE because he's a former member of Congress. He funded ICE with votes back in like 2019. And so they hammered him. Ironically, AIPAC is like, they love nobody more than Trump, but they're like, Tom Malinowski stood with Donald Trump to fund the evil ICE. We can't trust Tom Malinowski. And what's amazing, these ads worked in suburban, rich New Jersey among Democratic primary voters. They were like, oh, he funded ICE? Get him out of here. So
Amazing.
Yeah, let's cue one up if you've got it, Mac.
ICE's deportation force is out of control. Tom Malinowski voted with Trump to increase funding. And that's not all. He was caught cashing in on COVID-related stocks while in Congress.
This is about having privileged information and using it to your own personal advantage.
He failed to disclose the stock trading as required by law.
Tom Malinowski bought or sold up to $1 million worth of stock.
We just can't trust Tom Malinowski.
UDP is responsible for the content of this ad.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Even the tagline, he can't be trusted. Like, it makes sense to me that you're at a point in time where the Democratic base is like, we got to figure out which of these Democratic electeds we can trust that are going to like actually have some backbone and do the things we want them to do. So even the tagline itself, fits the mood of where the Democratic base is and what their concerns are. So thank you,
Right.
AIPAC.
Yeah, and ICE is a big litmus test right now. So it's a good one to hammer him on.
Yeah, AIPAC. So if you're now, think about it. So if you're a Democrat and you're just a normie Democrat who's been winning re-election, you've been casting the votes that your party wants you to cast, you've been trying to stay on the right side of your voters, you have now learned that there is a potential huge cost to pay for supporting ICE. You get out there and you defend ICE on TV or to your local news, that clip is going to be used against you now. You vote to fund ICE, that's going to be used or it could be used against you if you get a primary challenger, because AIPAC has done the extremely expensive focus groups and polling for us. And now they have road tested it in this district. And AIPAC has let us know the best way to take out a sitting member of Congress in a Democratic primary is to hit them with the ICE message.
And it comes as there are, going to be these negotiations in the Senate about what are going to be the additional restrictions put on, ICE and CBP, et cetera. So it also comes at an important moment. I mean, it does remind me in a certain way of Zoran's victory, because he showed like, no, even in New York City, one of the most heavily Jewish cities on the planet, where, in a Democratic primary, you probably will not get a more pro-Zionist Democratic primary electorate than New York City. And even there, Israel is poisonous. Even there, you can win as an avowed, like, pro-BDS, anti-Zionist and be successful. And so this is the type of district which would be the least, you would expect to be the least amenable to the anti-ICE messaging.
Right.
And here they find that it is actually was the most powerful message about this guy. And to your point, Ryan, seeing the way the vote shifted from the early vote before the ads drop and then the day of vote, and there's this, cataclysmic drop off for him. I mean, that tells you everything about just how powerful and just how horrified the Democratic base is about ICE. I mean, the other funny thing here, obviously, is like, how did, with all their money and all of their consultants and all of that, how did AIPAC not realize they were playing with fire here? Like, why didn't they just throw, maybe like $500,000 at some, or another measly $1 million into the race to also hit Anna Lila?
Yeah, the AIPAC candidate had put out an internal poll showing her competitive, but nobody believed it. No, you're not actually competitive. And they didn't spend a lot of money boosting her. Well, they didn't spend clearly enough. Now it's so expensive. Like AIPAC does have some limits on what it can do, believe it or not. And in the New York media market, that's pretty tough. Their new cope is, maybe we'll beat her in the general election because she's so radical. And it's like, well, Harris won that. So the election's in mid-April. Harris won this district by 8 points.
Forget about it.
Like, it's not happening.
She's going to win running. It's not going to be close.
And so
she's going to win by double digits.
Then their cope is, well, then maybe we can beat her in November when she runs for re-election, because this is a special election. She'll serve out the term. But it's still a Harris +8 district, and people are still going to be mad in November. There's some question. Malinowski, I think, has said he will not run. And it's a weird situation. So the general election is in April. And then the next primary is in June, like mid-June, for the November election. So if the AIPAC candidate or Malinowski wants to run, they have to endorse her for the general election in April. Campaign with her, say, let's beat the Republican. And then immediately on April 17th, they have to turn around and start a campaign against her for the June primary. And so how do you do that? How do you support someone for 2 months and then run against them immediately for 6 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other storyline here is there was another candidate, what was his name, Brendan Gill or something like that, who got 4th place, he was the one that was actually backed by the New Jersey Democratic Party machine, which is one of the more powerful machines nationally. And Steve Kornacki, who got a start in New Jersey politics and has encyclopedic knowledge to this day of every aspect of it, he was marveling at that piece, because in previous cycles, if you had the backing of the New Jersey machine, it was just basically like a fait accompli that you were going to be the nominee, like it was a done deal. So so here's Kornacki. A couple of questions. If Mejia is in fact the winner, will one of these candidates or someone else challenge her in the June primary for a full term? Remember, tonight's primary is just for the special election to fill Mikey Sherrill's unexpired term. There's a major push from outside groups, particularly pro-Israel, to take down Malinowski and to boost Tahisha Way. Would Way be interested in a one-on-one shot at Mejia for a full term? Would that outside support follow her? This is a Democratic-leaning district. Harris carried it by 9, Sherrill by 15 in the governor's race last year. Dems have been overperforming across the country in special elections of late, but New Jersey 11 does also contain areas more favorable to the pre-Trump GOP, and Republicans have nominated a potentially appealing candidate, Randolph Mayor Joe Hathaway. Could Mejia, backed by AOC and Bernie Sanders, be a tough sell at all in that mashup? So, I mean, I think based on the special election results that we've seen across the country, I don't think there's too much to worry about, but hey, I guess you never know.
Yeah, we'll see. And speaking of the machine, they did the exact same thing wrong in this race that they did in 2018 with Joe Crowley, which is their idea is, let's make these elections as undemocratic as possible, get as few people out to the polls as possible, and then we'll be able to go to nursing homes and get our 15,000 machine people out, and we'll win like that. And that's a flaw in the Death Star, because that means if you can yourself find 17,000 people in a district of 700,000, then you can win. I don't know, Mac, if you have the exact vote totals on there, but it's like nothing. And notice that we're talking about this on a Friday. Isn't that weird? Wait a minute. I thought in America elections are on Tuesday. No, New Jersey stops at nothing to try to depress turnout. So they even scheduled this election for a Thursday to confuse people and make sure that almost nobody came out. And congratulations, they played themselves.
Yeah. She's going to win with fewer than 20,000 votes total.
Like, that's crazy.
It's crazy.
That is crazy. Which does mean that, you can kind of bootstrap it. Like, that's a small enough number.
Right. You can knock on that many doors.
Yeah, I know
Right.
Ro Khanna was in the district earlier this week for an event, like just with the sort of star power of, Bernie and AOC and Elizabeth Warren and Ro coming in and supporting her, that was enough. And so it didn't really require that much money. I mean, it's extraordinary. And, the last thing to say about it is the reason that, well, two things. Number one, I'm sure everybody noted that ad we played, it doesn't say paid for by AIPAC. It says
Right.
paid for by
United Democracy Project.
Democracy Project.
Yeah.
Because, they know that first, AIPAC funds these things, but they know their name is toxic. So they come up with these like, we love democracy, type of names to so you don't realize who's actually behind these attack ads. That's number one. But number two, this AIPAC themselves position this as a shot across the bow, right? They know that Malinowski is not the most like anti-Israel guy, but they wanted to discipline the Democratic caucus and show, like, if you waver even one eye, if you have a moment of weakness watching us blow up babies and are like, maybe we shouldn't think about maybe doing something. No, you have to be lockstep or we're coming for you. And so the fact that they failed on what they wanted to be a demonstration of their strength and a grab to discipline the Democratic caucus and get them back completely in line is also really noteworthy and quite extraordinary and significant.
And just a piece of trivia, they call that, I was like, why on earth do they call, and at least this is their actual, this is AIPAC's actual super PAC. They didn't make up. What they do in a lot of districts is they just make up a fake new one that then doesn't have to disclose the donors until afterwards. So this is their real one. I was like, why is it called United Democracy Project? This makes no sense. It goes back to their line that they're the only democracy in the Middle East.
Oh,
so
God.
We are uniting the American democracy with the only democracy in the Middle East.
Right.
So that's where that brand comes from.
Well, Trump is in a lot of ways trying to make us more like that Israeli quote unquote democracy. So I guess the name does make some sense there.
Yeah. I mean, my last thing on this, where do you guys in the broader Democratic, party sort of space, where do you guys think AIPAC stands right now? I mean, is it sort of like a death knell almost of AIPAC? I mean, you guys both mentioned they can't even publicly endorse some candidates right now because it's such a poison pill. Yeah. Overwhelmingly, the polls are showing that Democratic voters would rather have a candidate that is not backed by the pro-Israel lobby than is backed by the Israel lobby. Majority of Democrats think Israel committed a genocide. Like, it has become such an overwhelmingly toxic brand that these candidates can't even associate themselves with the Israel lobby. And even then they have workarounds and they, AIPAC will tell their individual donors to go donate directly. And they're trying to figure out ways to still get the funding mechanisms in there without attaching their brand directly. But it seems like the issue has basically been won for the Israel critic crowd. At a ground level. I mean,
the money still being there. I'm working on a story with Dave Dayan over at The Prospect, which hopefully will be up today, on these 3 House races in Illinois, where they're doing exactly what you described, Mac. One of the fake super PACs they threw up, which we're going to demonstrate as effectively them, is called Elect Chicago Women. And I can't even remember the name of. Oh, the other one's about affordability. They're like glomming on to Mamdani. It's like the affordability now PAC or something, and these it's like AIPAC money, but that they're cloaking it and kind of sneaking it into these races because it would be so toxic to even come in with their official United Democracy Project PAC and run other things, because then you get more news coverage. And then people just start to understand, this is the AIPAC candidate, and this is the candidate that AIPAC doesn't like, and that is toxic and counterproductive for them.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I think Dem Tea Party is here, right?
It's here.
And we're going to, we're coming into primary season. There are going to be a bunch of results that come out of nowhere that people are not expecting. And, the circumstances here are very unusual because you've got this very divided field and this AIPAC money coming in against a different candidate, not the Bernie wing candidate of the party. But the effectiveness of that anti-ICE ad in this district tells you everything you need to know about where the Democratic base, and not just, one fact, the entire Democratic base, how motivated they are by that particular issue right now, and how much trouble and every incumbent Democrat has taken votes to fund ICE. They all have.
Mhm.
So presumably they're all vulnerable to a similar message that was so devastatingly effective against Malinowski.
Yep. You hate to see it.
Yep.
Mhm.
All right, should we go ahead
Breaks
and
my heart.
move on here to the latest on the Epstein files?
All right, so Max pulled a bunch of new Epstein. I mean, this is part of the latest Epstein files release. People continue to comb through. Obviously, it's 3 million documents, so it's going to take a long time for everybody to look at everything. But we've got some new disturbing documents that have been identified. And then also, a bit surprisingly, Barry Weiss's CBS with an investigation into what exactly happened the night that Jeffrey Epstein ends up dead. And Mac, you wanna set this up? What you got here?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and put up the image itself while I talk about what this CBS News article is talking about. So this is a portion of the video, or a screen grab of the video. The headline here from CBS News is "Who entered Epstein's jail tier the night of his death? Newly released video logs appear to contradict official accounts." So what are they talking about here? They say newly released Department of Justice documents show that investigators reviewing surveillance footage from the night of Jeffrey Epstein's death observed an orange-colored shape moving up the staircase toward the isolated locked tier where his cell was located at approximately 10:39 p.m. on August 9th, 2019. Now, this 10:39 p.m. is also interesting because this was between the 10 to midnight period where supposedly these guards had fallen asleep or weren't paying attention. So that's when this sort of orange blob appears. But they continue. They say that entry into an observation log of the video from the Metropolitan Correctional Center appears to suggest something previously unreported by authorities of a flash of orange that looks to be going up, again, the L tier stairs towards Epstein that could possibly be an inmate escorted up to that tier. It also appears, according to an FBI memorandum, that reviews by investigators led to disparate conclusions by the FBI and those examining the same video from the Department of Justice's Office of Inspector General. The FBI described it as possibly an inmate, and if you scroll down here, you had the Inspector General saying it could be an officer carrying orange linen or bedding, noting in their final report as an unidentified corrections officer. So again, this is the image that's in question here, but unidentified possible corrections officer carrying linens, or unidentified inmate potentially going up in that direction on the night of Epstein's death. What do you guys make of this?
I mean, continue to be a lot of questions. There's another line in this CBS News report, which maybe this was already known, but I didn't know it. It says the noose Epstein allegedly used has never been definitively identified. According to the Inspector General's report, a noose collected at the scene was later determined not to be the ligature used in Epstein's death. What do you mean that you never identified the noose? Yeah. Like, what do you mean by that? Because you have one jail cell, like everything's right there. It's not too hard to secure that scene and identify this is the one, that was wrapped around his neck. That blew my mind as well. Have you guys seen, on the more conspiratorial level, have you guys seen this thing about how one of his gamer accounts continues to be active in Israel?
Well, okay. He's playing Fortnite in Israel or something. I mean,
they just couldn't give up, like, whatever, legacy, skins and tokens and progress he had. So
you can't stop playing Fortnite, even if you're dead. Like, that's they've
the grind continues.
That's how addictive, and he had a hand in some of the addictive nature of video games. So it would be, it does make a level of sense. But no, I mean, listen, I think the fact that they tried to say there was no one in this video and accessing that jail tier when you can clearly see it in the video, and then they say, oh, well, maybe it's a corrections officer carrying orange linen.
Yeah, and they've said no, that's definitely not. Yeah.
Well, and either way, they also say in the CBS report, like, according to the people who work in this jail facility, whether or not it was an inmate or whether or not it was an officer, either way, that would have been a breach of protocol at the time.
Right.
Yeah. They said that inmates would not be, like, walking around the prison at this hour of the night. That would not be a thing that would typically happen. And so the other thing that we got from this release is we learned that his defense team was approaching the government in, a couple weeks before he ends up dead, about cooperating, which would mean, he was saying, hey, I have some information that might be interesting to you. And so I think that speaks not only to potential motivation that you don't want this guy around anymore, but it also speaks to his mentality where, he still had avenues to pursue. He certainly, if his defense team was exploring this, he certainly felt like this was a potential avenue to pursue, to be able to secure, a lesser sentence, be able to get out of there. So I think, both of those things fly in the face of the idea that he was truly suicidal and wanting to kill himself. We also had indications he was afraid to return to his jail cell because he had marks on his neck and had been attacked previously. So, again, if someone is suicidal and wanting to die, that's not really consistent with, a mentality of someone who is apparently trying to preserve their life.
My favorite response to this question of who could the video show going into Epstein's cell has been, I don't know, the murderer. Could be. But and to your point, Epstein is a person who has confronted setbacks throughout his entire life. Like he, rising up first of all through Coney Island, then he winds up at Bear Stearns. They find out he was a total fraud. He overcomes that. He gets fired from Bear Stearns, and he leverages that to this like international tax financier position. He got caught, with the child prostitution thing in the 2000s. Came back again, bigger than ever in the 2010s. This is a guy who believes in his ability to overcome obstacles, which is one of the biggest reasons I have such a hard time getting to a place where he's like, you know what, I've overcome all of these other things and I have all of this leverage and I have all of these friends and all this information, but I give up. Yeah, he just does not strike me as the kind of guy that gives up.
I totally agree with that. He's not the kind of guy that ever thinks he's checkmated, right? And you can see that even in the email, that he preserves to himself about Bill Gates. Right. Clearly, Bill Gates had said to him, listen, my wife's on my ass. I can't hang out with you anymore. We got to cut this off. He's not taking no for an answer. He's like, no, you think you're done with me? I don't care. I'm not done with you. And so here's how I'm going to keep you in the loop. Here's how I'm going to keep you in the web. This is not something you can just back away from. That's not how this works.
Right.
So
same with Leon Black. Leon Black's like, I'm done with you. He's like, no, I want my $40 million a year. And this is how it's going to go.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And, and also clearly Epstein is a narcissist, thinks he's the main character. I mean, people like this truly don't even think the world can go on if they aren't part of it. So it's it's just psychologically very inconsistent with someone who'd be like, they got me. I guess I'm out of here. But listen, I guess on the other hand, this is someone who's accustomed to flying around the world and living in a lap of luxury and having all of his, horrific carnal desires met at every hour of the day and whatever. So perhaps it was just too hard for him to bear,
that's
even for a short time, to be not living the lifestyle that, that he enjoyed living. So there is that. But, there are just so many weird inconsistencies and questions that remain that it's just, it's very hard for me to believe that the official story is truly what happened here.
And to the point of him feeling untouchable, you also rewind to the Acosta sweetheart deal. He might have figured the same thing. If you buy into the idea that Epstein in some way, shape, or form belonged to intelligence, and that's sort of what got him out of it the last time around, then, maybe there's some inclination there in his mind that, okay, that'll probably get me out of this again, right? They're not gonna push me into a situation where I feel like I'm forced to reveal all of this incriminating information about these high profile, wealthy people around the world that I have these connections to. So, he may have thought he still had a chance. And to your point, Krystal, it seems like in the days leading up to his death, they were still planning on, at least making some sort of a fight. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Mac, you want to roll through some of these other elements because these were some other, significant discoveries contained within this document release.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and start off with this one posted by Ed Krasenstein. So he says here, it now appears as though Jeffrey Epstein may have met with Donald Trump Jr. in 2019, just months before he died. So if you look at this, this email, again, this is from January 27th, 2019. The email here is from JEE Vacation, Jeffrey Epstein. He says, "Can we do coffee with Don Jr. Thursday, Friday? Only if easy. As you know, I like people that are funny." So what are we supposed to make of this in terms of the timeline from which Donald Trump said that he completely cut off his relation with Jeffrey Epstein in the early 2000s to now we've had sort of multiple things that have come out in this recent batch of files that indicate, okay, at least within his inner circle or maybe even his immediate family, that probably was not the case.
Yeah, there was an email Soccer and I covered where he was similarly, actually right before he was inaugurated for the first time, Epstein was claiming that he was hanging out with what he described as the Trump boys, which you would assume is, Eric and Don Jr. And even if you buy their denials and these meetups never happened, or Epstein was just blustering and bragging and name dropping, and he wasn't really getting together with, Trump or Trump Jr. or whoever, clearly he had direct connectivity to the administration, as we see through the extensive Steve Bannon relationship.
Right.
And Bannon, especially first-term Trump, and Ryan, you can speak to this more than I can, but especially first-term Trump, I mean, he's in the administration to start with, and he's deeply influential. I think he continues to be influential in Trump world as both, an outside force and someone who knows all the players on the inside as well. So you see Epstein and Bannon going back and forth on, who on Supreme Court picks, right? On world events. And Epstein is offering his take, and Bannon's, I helped get John Bolton in there, but he's controlled by Sheldon Adelson, but maybe we can, work with him in this way or that way. So whether or not he was directly talking to Trump or Trump Jr. or family members, clearly he was having a direct impact on the decision-making of the Trump administration.
Yeah, absolutely. And but Bannon is this unusual figure who kind of loves to talk to the left. Like the fact that he was talking to Chomsky. He gabs with reporters in ways that, a lot of the MAGA types don't do. Like, I think he saw Epstein as this like entree into this Clinton world, of endless amounts of intel on the Clinton world, of his enemies. And Bannon and Don Jr. are very close. So that's a direct line if Epstein ever wanted it.
Well, I also have to think that Bannon partly wanted to manage the relationship with Epstein because he knew that Trump had this long-standing relationship with Epstein. I mean, reportedly, Bannon had said, allegedly, that Epstein was the one guy who could keep Trump from the presidency, who could ruin it all for him. And so, I think there was also a sense of like, let me keep this guy close so I can, kind of control this situation and maybe find out what there is to be found out so that, I can protect my guy over here.
Yeah, there was that one email or text message where he's like, it kills Trump that, it would kill Trump to know that you and I are so tight.
There was something like he said at one point, Epstein, now you know why Trump lies awake at night, knowing that I'm still out there. And actually that email was sent like, I don't know, very soon before he goes to prison and ends up dead.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. We also had a couple more things that I wanted to bring up here. So on the censorship angle, right, obviously there's been widespread criticism on both sides, both in terms of a lack of censorship of some of the potential victims, as well as over-censoring on people who could be, potentially implicated in Jeffrey Epstein's deeds. But we had this as well, pointed out here by Quad Carl, that seems to be sort of like a slip-up on some sort of automated redacting by the Trump administration. So if you see here in this seemingly innocuous sentence, this person says, I was going to take polo lessons in Calgary, but I, redacted, think my body can handle it. Now, I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that this person says, I don't think my body can handle it, but probably had some sort of a typo and said, D-O-N, I don't think my body can handle it. So could be some sort of an indication here that there was sweeping censorship and redactions on many things having to do with keywords like Don or Donald or Trump or Donald Trump or whatever else the case may be. So, even with the shocking stuff that we have gotten from these files, it seems like it's still a tiny fraction of what actually exists out there.
What do you make of this, Ryan? Because on the other hand, we just saw an email where Don Jr. was in there unredacted.
Mm-hmm. See, it's sloppy. They were wrecked by Doge. So, like, this is still a human enterprise. Like, they have to actually execute it.
Well, and they could have assigned down different batches to, different groups
different
are
people.
working on it.
Yeah.
So this one censored Don, this one screwed up and didn't censor Don, or who knows.
And there's one that was really telling to me that I was looking at the other day. It's an exchange between Epstein and Scaramucci. And it's very clearly Scaramucci because he's saying, I want to do a CNBC hit. And then at the end, he sends a Twitter link. And if you type in that Twitter link into Twitter, it's the Mooch's CNBC hit. So it's the Mooch. And he's redacted. It's like, Mooch is not a survivor of Epstein abuse, like, that we know of.
Yeah.
Why are we protecting this man?
Why is the Mooch getting protection here? Like, your 8 days in the administration earn you, like, the protection of the censors here. So it's just, there clearly are a lot of censors going through this who feel like it's their job to protect anybody who's friendly to Trump or to their movement.
Yeah, and isn't he doing a bit of a right-wing turn at the moment, separated from Midas Touch now, or is that whatever? Anyway, I mean, there's a disgusting level of all the men who are involved here being redacted and protected, and then many victims being exposed. And I think that in and of itself speaks to their priorities here. And
then they're then using their own screw-ups to then justify mass kind of withdrawing of documents from the public. Like, there's this one email where a woman who seems to be on pretty good terms with Epstein, a grown woman, sends him a bunch of like nude pics, and they shouldn't have, but they did. They posted all of those pics. Then they go and they're like, oh, we accidentally included a lot of child sex abuse material. A lot of CSAM was put in, so we're pulling back all of this stuff. It's like, no, you didn't. You didn't actually do it. You erroneously posted this woman's nude photos, and you should withdraw those. But she's an adult, and so they're using the CSAM claims because the public is like, oh, CSAM, I don't want to be anywhere near it, and justifiably so. But they're lying about what's in there,
right?
Claim because nobody's going to then call them on it.
Yeah, and so, in the days after the initial batch was dropped, if you did certain keyword searches on specific names, you could see the amount of results that came up would drop slowly over time. It would go from 5,000 to, now it's 4,700, now it's 4,300 or whatever over successive days as they were removing some of it.
Well, you guys got them all over at Jmail, right?
Yes,
Ryan?
I think we do. I think we have them. Like, we're constantly, it's a cat and mouse game with their posting and withdrawing, but I think we've got them. Yeah.
Yeah. So another reason why you guys should check out that tool if you're wanting to do some journalism here yourselves, and just get a sense for how these networks operated and what their day-to-day exchanges were like, because it is an extraordinary and horrifying window. And I mean, I don't know about you, Ryan, like, when I thought about the way the world worked and like these networks of power and how this all operated, I thought it was a little more diffuse. Like, it's just so incredibly direct. Like, the most cynical view I possibly could have had of how power networks operate, like, was maybe not even cynical enough based on these emails and these exchanges and the way that, they're all insider trading with each other. They're all protecting each other. They're all bonded together through these like heinous acts. I don't know.
Yeah. My colleague Maz and I were in New York Wednesday and Thursday filming a video around Epstein's neighborhood. And what really is so striking about being there is how tight of a social set this is. Like, it's all of these super elite rich people. Like, we understand that they travel in the same professional circles, and for people who live on the Upper East Side, like, they understand the social scene there. But for those of us that don't, like being there was like, oh, like this person lives here, this person lives here, this person lives here. Woody Allen's here, Jeffrey Epstein's here, Donald Trump's, the plaza's here, Trump's building is here, the UN's right here. Like it's all happening in a few blocks, and all the wealth that like is pouring into the United States is like just staying like right in those few blocks, and they're all hanging out with each other all the time.
Yep.
And so it brings home how
going to the Hamptons this time of year, going to Palm Beach that time of year. They go to these restaurants in the Upper East Side, live in these neighborhoods, their kids go to these schools. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it really does bring home your point about how tight this really is. And it's because and it's very easy to understand once you get there. It's like, oh, we all understand these social circles. They just happen to be running the world.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I've been thinking a lot about is like these are not people who have any sort of like patriotic loyalty. Their loyalty is only to themselves and their class, like truly. And so the episode that spells that out, I mean, there's a number of them. The email exchange where is it Peter Thiel that Epstein is talking to when he's like, zero interest rates were too high and we need more chaos because it's easier to like, to profit when there's death and destruction and collapse than trying to find a good deal during ordinary times. I'm butchering the language, but that was what he was saying. I mean, that's, it's deeply, not just not patriotic, it's like deeply anti-human.
Antisocial,
antisocial, anti-creation, anti-human. And then also the revelations about Lord Mandelson, where he's plotting with Epstein against the UK. And like, let's get Jamie Dimon in here, to bully the government so that this banker bonus thing we don't want doesn't go through, and he can like threaten them, with X or Y or Z. So again, it's like, it's actually treasonous behavior, which is part of why it's such a scandal in the UK, because you're plotting with this financier against the government, against the will of the people directly. So
and that guy might go to jail.
And that guy might actually go to jail. I mean, it's a pretty clear cut. Like the insider trading part of that is like pretty clear cut. He's instantly, and this is crazy. Like you're in the midst of the crash in 2008. And what you're thinking of doing is like, I just got this information. Let me forward it to Jeffrey Epstein. Like that's your first move. Yeah. That's insane. Yeah. That's insane. But it just shows you like Epstein didn't need to be some sort of like absolute financial wizard, because the network was everything, right? And he had certainly, and I mean, he was a knowledgeable person about, financial inner workings. He was very early to Bitcoin. There's a lot of questions about that too, of just how involved he was in the early days of Bitcoin and how beneficial that was to him. And I'm sure he instantly understood this is a useful network for my criminal behavior, as many people did with crypto, et cetera. But in any case, he didn't have to be a financial wizard. If you have that kind of insider information, it's easy. Right. You get the tip, we're going to do a 500 euro bailout. That's coming. Okay, well, let's do this. There was one. Actually, do we have this one about the shorting the ruble, Mac?
Yeah, we do.
Put that one up because that's very relevant to this. He was shorting the ruble just before they invaded Crimea. Isn't that the timing of it? 5 days before.
Yeah, let's check the dates. And this person might have had the time off a little bit, but yeah, he.
So the date from this email from Epstein is on March 13th, 2014. So I think that is about 7 or so days before the official annexation.
So why that move? Right at that moment, suddenly he just had an inkling.
There was another one here that puts it more into kind of explicit picture for the framework of what you're describing here, Krystal. So this is an email between Epstein and a Rothschild here. And she says, "Hi, Jeff. Very long day sitting on the bank board. Numbers are okay, but not satisfactory to me. And I'm being put under pressure to be more innovative about asset management funds while restructuring. I'm in a dinner with a client, fed up. I miss our talks and hope that you're well. We'll be home tomorrow night. Will you be free? And let's discuss Ukraine." And this was after Epstein had said, "Ukraine upheaval should provide many opportunities." Many.
Yeah.
Similar. It also, one more example of that here is real quick, is it reminds me of this drop site reporting here from y'all, Ryan, and this is in the piece on Cote d'Ivoire and him working with Ehud Barak to set up some sort of a security agreement. So this was an email between Epstein and Ehud Barak, the former prime minister and defense minister of Israel. He said, with civil unrest exploding and the desperation of those in power, isn't this perfect for you? And then Barak replied, you're right in a way, but it's not simple to transform it into a cash flow. So like this is the sort of mentality that they had with chaos and disruption and destabilization around the world, is how can we use this for our own power games? How can we use this to transform it into a cash flow?
Yeah, which again, like, this is disaster capitalism. This is, these are concepts that obviously we are very familiar with. But to just see it so overt and so naked, like, oh, war, yay, goody, amazing opportunities for us to get even richer and more powerful.
Yeah. And the use of cash flow is an interesting, like, little bit of daylight between Barak and Epstein, because Epstein's like, hey, chaos, like, let's go in and make, $75 million like tomorrow. And Barak is thinking, okay, but I just want millions flowing in constantly. And all of this chaos like makes the flow part of it tricky. Like he just wants to sit back and just let it flow in. Whereas Epstein's more of a peripatetic, like, let's just bounce around the world and like stash what we can. Mm-hmm. But you can do both if you work hard enough at it.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah, I mean, there's an extraordinary email about Libya as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where they're like, here's how much natural resources they have. I think we could skim this much off of it. And this is before we, came in and took out Gaddafi. So, that's the way that they think. And so, going back to the point about nationalism, like they see nation states and they see nationalistic sentiment as like a tool to be exploited as well, like a rubish understanding of the world, while they're operating at the level that action really happens, which is using the entire globe as their plaything, and moving the pieces around such that it benefits them, even as it immiserates the world. And the other thing that I keep coming back to is there's an extraordinary exchange where he's talking about, he sort of has contempt for Bill Gates because Gates is doing all this charity work in Africa and keeps asking Epstein, like, hey, do you want to like contribute to whatever X or Y or Z global health initiative I'm doing in Africa? And Epstein is very irritated by this because he says he's got this Catholic notion that all humans are equally worth equal amounts, like that they're of equal value. And he just thinks that this is so preposterous and naive because he has this supremacist ideology and overtly eugenicist ideology that he talks about openly and is trying to put into practice through his like breeding ranch in New Mexico, where, he wants to seed the world with his superior offspring. And it's very similar to the ideology of Elon Musk, for example, or there was like a Chinese billionaire who was doing the same thing. It's very natural for these wealthy, powerful men to have supremacist and eugenicist ideologies because it justifies their place in the hierarchy. It allows them to fully embrace disaster capitalism and exploiting war and not giving a shit about all of the tremendous horror and harm that they're causing around the world, because those people aren't really people the way that we are. They don't deserve to have the lives that we live.
Yeah.
All right, should we go ahead and move on over to econ now?
All right, so the economy really sucks. Mac, we've got a couple stories to go through here. And the data is starting to really put some meat on the bones of what people have been feeling for a very long time, which is that there are no jobs to be had. Like, it's this weird situation where we're starting to see a significant number of layoffs, but it's not as if you're getting that's the biggest problem has been that there just aren't job openings. Like if you wind up unemployed, it's very, very hard to find a new job. Though people are starting to get fired and laid off at a pretty rapid clip. But what has led into this and has been this absolute like just lack of any jobs opening. Politico has an interesting lead here, which is just roll with on. Just read what they say here. Say President Donald Trump's economy is booming, but if you're looking for a job, good luck. The Labor Department reported on Thursday that job openings in December unexpectedly dropped to their lowest level since mid-2020 during the heart of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's a sign that companies have cooled on hiring despite an economic expansion that the White House has framed as the dawn of a new golden age. So we have this weird situation where we are not at all technically in a recession because GDP is growing. But there's all of this insane, tariff chaos that has been sending uncertainty into the market, but people are also then wondering how much of this is AI. So if I talk to a lot of managers and executives at major companies around the world, what they all tell me, I'm curious if you guys have had any conversation with people that are similar to this. It's like when somebody leaves a job now at a company, the first thing they do is, it used to be as the economy is rolling, all right, so this person left a job, we need to hire someone to replace them. Now it is, we need to look very hard at, can we do their job using the productivity gains we're getting from AI to spread the work to other humans who can be more productive because they've got these AI capabilities. In other words, if somebody leaves, can we just not hire somebody? And the answer that so many managers are coming back with is yes, we do not need to hire for this role. And a lot of these Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies are forecasting that this process of attrition is going to lead to massive reductions in their workforces over the years. So some of it is this uncertainty sparked by Trump's kind of incessant need to own gold, like the economy. But some of it is also these companies saying, do we actually need people to fill this role? Maybe we don't.
Ryan, what is your estimation of how these tech oligarchs think this is all going to work out? Because I mentioned this yesterday. Chris Hayes had this viral tweet where he was like, I need you people to understand billionaires are trying to do to white collar workers what they already did to blue collar workers. That's where we're heading. As you've pointed out in the past, now the bulk of consumer spending is with, again, the top several percentile in the country. So they don't really need your consumer dollars anymore. They don't need your labor. They don't need your consumer dollars. They don't need you even to send as meat into the grinder for their wars increasingly with AI warfare and the use of special operations. So what do you think they're planning? This is going to work out?
What they will tell you is a version of Sam Altman's and Elon Musk's explanation for why they're doing AI. They will say, I agree with you. And I actually fear for what this is producing in the country and in the world. And I fear what it's going to leave to the world that my children are going to inherit. But my job as a corporate executive is to do what the company needs to do to get ahead. And if I don't do it, my competitor is going to do it, and then we will fail and we will lose to them. That is what all of them say. And it is a genuine collective action problem in a decentralized capitalistic economy like this, where you don't have a kind of state that's able to say, no, these are the forces that we're seeing, but from a social perspective, this is how we want to direct those forces. And we, as a self-governing democratic polity, are going to do that. That we don't have that. What we have is our companies who have quarterly earnings reports coming up, and they need and now are starting to be measured by the level of attrition that they can pull off, the number of the amount of people that they can replace with AI.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, my answer societally, because obviously this off to the races AI push is coming from the Trump administration. This is really their big bet on the economy. It's not tariff. Trump thinks tariffs are fun, but the real big bet is on, we're going to take off all the guardrails and we're going to flood the AI tech oligarchs, go, no holds barred. And I think you see in their budget priorities the way they're thinking about how this is going to go. That's why they're funding the largest law enforcement agency in history in ICE, better funded than immigration enforcement operations, better funded than any military on the planet except for two, ours and China. So they need this massive domestic police state equipped with the surveillance state and all of that stuff. And then you also have him asking for a $1.5 trillion defense budget. So that's their view. And they foolishly only believe in hard power, right? That's what you see in the way that they operate in the world. They are delusional enough to think it's enough just to hold people in place using guns and hard power. And so I think that's their plan. I mean, just judging by their budget priorities and where they're shifting resources and focus and money.
Yeah. I mean, Ryan, to your point earlier, like there is a way that we could be going about this that actually does serve the needs and could improve the lives of average Americans. But it's impossible to do that under a capitalist structure like we have in this country. It seems like AI technology is almost the most extreme example of a race towards monopoly under capitalism, because it's so rapidly advancing and consolidating, and eventually we're going to have one company that ends up getting that major big breakthrough moving forward. And so, under the structure that we have right now, the no holds bar Trump, let's let it all rip. Where is this going to end up other than just with monopolistic sort of like a techno-feudal society where we have a handful of people who control the entirety of the most powerful technology that's ever been wielded by human beings, and then everybody else is just sort of left to rot? I mean, it doesn't even seem like they hypothetically have a sustainable plan for the next 10, 15, 20 years down the line in the future.
No, corporate executives are talking to them it's some of the source of the greatest doomerism. Like they're, and you can judge them, for being the ones like foot soldiering and carrying it out, but they're even more frightened that shockingly than like the average public, because they're seeing it like happening now.
Which is why they're like building bunkers and planning to escape to Mars.
These are
seriously,
these are the types of people who make like, let's say $800,000 a year. Rather than $80 million a year. They're very rich and doing well, and they'll be fine. And they can probably make sure their kids are fine-ish. But they also care about the world, and they're stuck they're in these jobs. And they're like, what we're seeing like unfold around us, we're gonna, our head count's gonna drop by 30, 50, 80%, like over the next, 3, 4, 5 years. And you do that across the board, like what are these people going to do?
Yeah.
And like, how do you support a show like this when tens of thousands more of our like paying subscribers are laid off? Like it is a very dark time that we're heading into, and the oligarchs have nothing beyond UBI at this point. Like, that was their vision. Because they saw this, they're like, if we succeed in what we're trying to do, we're going to desiccate society. And so we need then universal basic income. Like that was their answer. I haven't seen them come up with anything.
And then you also have this sort of like
concentration camps. I mean, I hate to be really dark, but ICE is building out, they're buying fields and installing warehouses and
dozens of them.
And it's this massive police state that is being funded. We already know that it's not just for immigrants. I mean, we already see the people they're clashing with in the streets are mostly white liberals. So I don't think it's too crazy to think that is part of the plan, at least enough to like scare people into line and to control movement and control opposition, et cetera. So, I mean, I think that's from the political class. I think that's the way they're thinking about it, because they don't need you anymore, right? The only reason they need you is for your labor. And if they don't need your labor, they don't need you anymore.
Yeah. And I also wonder, like, with this sort of like transhumanism mindset, or even in some cases seemingly like anti-human perspectives, like how pervasive is that amongst the upper levels of some of these tech companies, where they might just like not, I mean, you remember that Peter Thiel clip, I think it was Peter Thiel from a while back, where he was asked, like, is it important that human civilization continues, or that human beings continue into the future? And he like legitimately had to pause and think about whether or not he thought that was something that needed to happen moving forward. So I think for some of them, there's an acceptance or a willingness to just sort of blindly go down this path that even they know will lead to civilizational destruction or mass suffering or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah.
There is a view in Silicon Valley, I don't know how pervasive, but there is a view that having an attachment to human beings is speciest. And so that true enlightenment comes from not caring that the robots take over and crush us like ants. If they're, furthering their civilization and able to come up with, these incredible technological solutions, like we should all be in favor of that. And that for us to be sentimentally attached to human beings is very small-minded thinking of us.
Just disturbing
Mac,
stuff.
Mac, you want to put up this CNBC one?
Sure.
Because this is, so I was saying, like, the big problem with the economy has not been layoffs up until now. It has more been when people leave, they can't find a job, that there's no new job openings. Now we're getting a double whammy. Layoffs in January were the highest to start a year since 2009, according to Challenger, which measures these. 108,000 layoffs for the month, which they have more than doubling from the same period a year ago, up 205% from last month. Like, that's
wow,
insane.
Wow.
And they say at the same time, companies announced just 5,306 new hires, the lowest since January of 2009. If you weren't around for January of 2009, that was the darkest time in the American economy since the Great Depression.
Wow.
And this is going on while Trump is talking about a boom, and while GDP is GDP is still, maybe it's going to be down in the next quarter, but still growing-ish. Like, so the wheels are coming off is basically what these numbers are showing.
Before we jump to the premium half, Ryan, real quick question for you. What do you make of the Bitcoin drop? What do you think is going on there?
I don't know. Like, I saw somewhere that like an early whale dumped billions. Now getting all of these the Bitcoin crowd really wanted all these institutions like banks and others to like get in on the rush. So the more buyers, the more you push the price up. Getting them in though,
work, yes.
If they're on margin, and it hits a certain level, as it crashes, the crash becomes self-fulfilling, because if you have to sell at 70,000 and that now it crashed and it hit 70,000, now you've got to sell your entire position, and you selling your position moves it to 69,000, and now other people who had to sell at 69 to cover their margins have to sell, and that so some of it is like, the more people you get in who are leveraged like that, the more volatility you're going to get. It was already an insanely volatile thing. I'm sure a bunch of people are out there buying the dip.
Well, it says right now, Bitcoin narrowly avoids falling under 60,000 as it bounces off of lows. So it looks like there's a bit of a recovery going on right now. But, the hope was that as the dollar weakens and, people move away from it as the safe harbor and world reserve currency, that quote unquote digital gold, which is what they, what they want Bitcoin to be, that would be the thing that would, the new flight to safety would be Bitcoin. But what we've seen instead is that it's, it's more precious metals. It's like actual gold.
It's significantly below what it was when Trump was came into office.
Which is wild, because he's the crypto president. He's the guy. If it was ever going to shoot to the moon, then
his coin's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what it's done the last couple of days, but like, he's up.
Yeah.
He's up
Yeah,
or
well,
down, basically.
The UAE or Saudi or whoever
right.
is going to make sure that continues to be the case whenever they need some deal done with the government.
Yeah.
It is kind of funny to call it the digital gold. Kind of skirts around like the entire reason why gold has value in the first place, or silver has value in the first place, because of its physical limited nature in reality.
Bitcoin is technically limited, because
you
of
have to
the
mine
way
it
it's,
and-
so you have to
yeah,
mine
okay.
it. So that's why they said, well, that's the scarcity that's built into this that makes it akin to gold.
Well,
That's
not
the
going too
thinking.
well right now.
Yeah. All right. Should we move over to the premium portion? We have to play these Mamdani clips. They're just too charming of him with these little children. They're absolutely adorable. We have to get to the right-wing mess. Take a few AMA questions. So if you want to get the whole thing, guys, breakingpoints.com. If not, we totally get it. Appreciate all of you, and we'll see you on the other side.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.